Episode 181, Lance.
All right, so let's begin by we got some comments, we got some feedback when we asked if we were shadow banning, if we were being shadow banned, and we got some feedback. We didn't know you guys were listening to us, viewers. One guy I thought was very insightful. He said, "It's not that we're being shadow banned; it's that we suck." All right. Another guy, though, said something that I thought was more helpful, and he said that
I mean, we already
we
knew
are,
that we suck, so I mean that's you know.
well, I knew Rick sucked, all right. But anyway, one other guy said that we're getting 17 double ads per show. Now, we foolishly thought we could make some money 2, 3 years ago by accepting advertising. We haven't. We're probably not going
Yeah,
to.
we
And
forgot that we'd enabled ads too.
yeah. And the thing is that we now repent of that decision because we'd rather have a good show. So we're going to have no ads for the foreseeable future. We're suspending that ad option from YouTube. So it's just going to be Rick and I yelling at each other and me laughing victoriously and Rick crying pitifully. Um, the
That's my
next subject,
contact lenses. When it looks like I'm crying, it's my contact lenses.
yeah, that and you were thinking about Ireland.
Yeah,
So
puppies.
the the uh, the next thing I wanted to talk about was something that called critical race theory. And it's so diabolical and insidious that most people don't know much about it or have even heard of it. It turns out that under the Obama Biden years, something called critical race theory wormed its way into all of the government institutions and many of the major corporations of this country. What it is at Harvard, an African American professor developed something called critical race theory, which is basically the idea is that all of Western civilization, including logic and God, are inventions of white people. And so he decided, whose name escapes me, that what we need to do is see everything in terms of dominance of the white race over people of color, and that this should be the new way of viewing everything in society. This is related, as I said last week, to the way Marx tried to turn classes against each other, but he tried to turn workers against owners, oppressors against the oppressed. Uh, Critical race theory tries to turn oppressive races against races that are being oppressed. And so his solution, and the solution of these lunatics, is that all white people in positions of power are to be re-indoctrinated with to know that they shouldn't feel superior and to apologize to people of color. Now, um, this is going on under the Obama administration. It has been going on through all of our government agencies, including the military. And one of the most egregious examples is that it even wormed its way into the company that makes all of our nuclear weapons. So what they're doing is they're indoctrinating all of the people working at these companies are divided into people of color and whites. And they, first of all, the whites have to apologize to the people of color, but secondly, the it's wormed its way into choosing the executives and the leaders of the science groups so that they're picking leaders based on color and gender instead of talent. So it's having an extremely corrosive effect, possibly on our defense. They're doing it in the military to all the soldiers. And I actually have another reason to vote for Trump because this week, President Trump signed an executive order that all of this is to be stopped. So, one more reason to vote for Trump, one more reason not to vote for Biden.
Right. So if this has been so fucking pervasive, um, how come I didn't hear about this shit until like 3 days ago?
The reason is that all of the people reporting it are told at the very beginning that they'll be fired if they say anything.
So where
That
did you read about this?
what happened was one guy uh, had found out about it, and he made it his mission to sort of try to assemble all of the complaints and information. In other words, he started an organization where if you were experiencing this, you could send your story to him, and he got hundreds and hundreds of stories. He says that the first thing they do is they say they'll fire you, and they don't even say that. Sometimes they just say that they just bully people and say, look, you're in trouble. They threaten people. So, if you're going to your job and you just want to earn a living, and they tell you to attend a certain meeting, 99% of the people out there will attend the meeting and go back to work after lunch and want to keep their jobs. They've got houses, families. So that's how they do it. And Trump found out about it and got rid of it.
All
At
right.
least officially, he's ordered it to stop. But the problem is that it's going to take a very long time to find it, to root it out, and get rid of it.
All right. So when I was at Kimmel, once a year we had to have a meeting about workplace harassment.
Hang on for 1 second. I need to plug you in. So I'm losing power. So you tell.
All right. So
We're
I
at the
don't know if
cut.
this
I got to
is
get my
at
power
all
cord. Hang on.
similar,
Hang
but
on.
they'd have somebody from Disney corporate would come in and explain what we shouldn't do. And since it's a bunch of lunatics and comedy people, it was just an excuse for everybody to say, so we shouldn't do this, and then say something horrible. And then there was always a lot of joy in those meetings because it turns out, I was just saying that now that you're back, that in the meetings about harassment, it turns out that fatness is,
Director, I didn't hear what Rick said. Can you edit that part out and we start over where
no, it's
Rick
okay. Come
started
on.
speaking?
I'm catching you up. But I had workplace harassment meetings, which are tough to give to a bunch of comedy lunatics. And I was saying that every year, one of the joyous parts was the smart asses in the audience making it clear, and the harassment expert having to admit that fatness is not a protected class. So if you want to make fun of fat people, there's nothing they can do.
Well, okay, then what's the problem?
Um, no offense against fat people. It's just when you're in a meeting like that and your job is to be a professional asshole, it's just an opportunity to be an asshole and to get free pizza. Um, uh, and I don't know, like I've noticed since Me Too, um, and Black Lives Matter and everything else, I'm marinating in that stuff on Twitter, and I just consider it another framework in which to consider stuff. Like, when you look at movies from 5 years ago, 10 or more than 10 years ago, um, you see you see much more solid. We've talked about this. The movies are much more solidly white people. Love Actually, I don't know what the racial breakdown of Love Actually is, but it's got a shitload of white people in it. Where if it were made today, it would be more racially balanced. Um, there's a show that Carol and I binge watched on Netflix called Emily in Paris, starring Phil Collins's kid, the very lovely Lily Collins. Um, and it's definitely from the before times that she has the big cities of the world. It's a glamorous show. It's by the same guy who did Sex in the City, and
I believe you mentioned this last week.
yeah, that it's cities like Paris and New York are really for rich people. You know, people on Twitter have been arguing about, Biden says he'll raise taxes on people making more than 400 grand a year. And then some dickhead from New York City argued, well, if you're making 400 grand a year in New York City, you're not rich, you're just getting by. And people were like, fuck you. But really, when you look at the big cities, you can get by obviously for much less, but uh, the great cities of the world are for rich people, and when you're telling the stories of people in those cities, you're often telling the stories of economically privileged people, and it's not bad to tell these stories. It's just one more dimension to look at. Like when you look at shit like sociobiology is the idea that basically that sperm is cheap and eggs are expensive. It's this whole theoretical framework that guys just want to fuck as many things as they can, and women want to get the best guy in because child rearing is this fucking long process that sucks for women if you don't have a reliable male partner. Um, and so sociobiology is a framework to look at the world from. Marxism, capitalism, all frameworks that inform certain aspects of the world. Evolution, religion, everything, these all provide frameworks that are helpful in looking at the world. They're not everything. If you're claiming that this critical race theory um, kind of secretly dominated the world since Obama, which I tend to doubt because I haven't heard about it. But I'm okay if it hasn't dominated and it's just one more dimension. Now you claim it's this insidious force that's fucking up America. And having known nothing about it except having seen the term like 3 days ago and then just not being interested enough to pursue it, though I will talk about a couple things that popped up in the same set of tweets: eugenics and racehorse theory, which are very different. But um, I don't mind something like critical race theory as long as it's not overly corrosive, because we have lots of frameworks to view the world through, with. Um, anyway,
All right. Well, I just wanted to correct one thing that you said, and the Democrats are lying when they say that they will only raise taxes on people making more than 400,000. Both Biden and Harris have said they will repeal the Trump tax cuts, and every independent source will tell you that the Trump tax cuts cut taxes of everybody: poor people, middle class people, and rich people. So it's just not true. In fact, if as soon as they repeal those tax cuts, poor people's taxes will go up by several $1,000s. So
I
if you
think
want to raise
that's
taxes on poor people, then vote for Biden.
I
And
disagree with the amount because I remember we had this talk when the tax cuts came in and I wasn't working. Now I'm getting paid not to work. I'm lucky enough to have a pension, but Carol was the breadwinner, and her taxes went down by $5 for every check she got every 2 weeks. So taxes went down by 250 a week, $2.50.
okay,
Um,
well, I don't know I'm not your accountant, but I can tell you that that's anecdotal, meaning that
sure.
it refers to just your wife. But the independent studies showed that it went down across the board. It went down for poor people, middle class people, and also, by the way, under the Trump economy, wages went up more for the poor people than it did for the rich people, which was a change from the Obama administration.
So now, I mean, your studies are coming out of conservative think tanks. There were other
No, it's
studies.
just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, because I remember at the time we were looking at, and there was a lot of the shit was pretty equivocal as to whether people's, and taxes overall went down or not, and it was not clear because certain deductions went away. Um, I know that I would I would buy it if you told me that doing taxes became easier for people under Trump because I used to my dad used to be my accountant, not anymore. He passed away, but I've been doing our taxes, and it's just not that hard. Where it seemed like it was much more difficult a few years ago, but it may be just be I don't know. But I wouldn't entirely buy that the taxes went down across the board for people with the Trump tax cuts.
Okay, well, the reason for the boom in the economy under Trump, the there are two explanations. The first is he lowered taxes, and the second is that he lowered regulations dramatically on businesses. So he passed a rule that for every new regulation, they had to repeal 8 regulations. And so government got off businesses' backs, and the government stopped taxing people as heavily, and it unleashed the American economy. Now, the one thing
Oh,
you can be certain of, even if you don't believe that Trump lowered taxes, you can be certain that Biden will raise taxes because he says he's going to repeal the tax breaks that Trump gave you. So your taxes will go up if you vote for Biden.
fine. I don't believe it, but I don't want to argue about it further. And you're not trying to, I mean, you try to, I mean, you're trying to convince the viewers. You don't have to worry about me. Um, all right. So what else? Oh, a couple other things that popped up along with critical race theory is this racehorse theory um, that somebody had an argument that people should be bred like racehorses. That with racehorses, you take the best racing horses, the fastest, most durable horses, and you have them fuck each other and then create another generation of horses and you take the best of those and after a bunch of generations you should get better horses according to racehorse theory and you apply that to people by not letting the shitty people fuck, which is called eugenics. You try to eliminate bad genes um, by not letting people with shitty genes make babies. And this is a bad theory for a number of reasons, including that Hitler tried to do this. I mean, he by just fucking straight up killing people he thought were inferior. And it's not a theory that that necessarily is true. I mean, you could look at dogs. Dogs are fucking ridiculous. You started with wolves, these very um, efficient predators. And then you started breeding dogs for all sorts of reasons, and now you have hundreds of breeds, a lot of which have problems, hip dysplasia, snouts that are so short that the dogs can't breathe. Also, just like our white dog is ridiculous. She's the cutest motherfucking thing in the world, super furry. She's cute because she's furry. She's fucking just a giant furball. Also a psychotic rat killer, because the dog first was bred, her breed, a Westie, was first bred to have a little pointy snout that got in there in the wood piles and was able to drag rats out. And then somebody noticed they were cute, and then they were bred for cuteness, but the psychoness didn't go away. So you've got a very cute psycho, which is fine. She's pretty entertaining, and she's lovely. But in terms of being an efficient creature, only in the houses of people who can take care of anyway. That's objection one is, who's deciding what are good genes and what aren't. Objection two is, it's not that straightforward. The Darwinism, naive Darwinism, social Darwinism, has it the survival of the fittest, which makes it sound like jocks get to do all the fucking and surviving because they're the fittest. But it's not clear what's the fittest, because there's also the sneaky fucker strategy where while the jocks are out doing like bravely dominating the world, the sneaky fucker sneaks into their houses and nails their wives. So that's a different kind of fitness. There's also the fitness that doesn't get discussed at all because people don't realize the broken person fitness, the person who's wimpy and indefinitely physically inferior develops. It's a little bit like the sneaky fucker theory or strategy, but the person who's at odds with his or her environment has to think about everything. Like, for the jock, everything comes easy, and then that's where you get the dumb jock stereotype. And then the person who's, got a limp or who's, just bad in gym or fucking whatever has to think about things. And that person develops, superior analytic skills and a different point of view. Fucking Darwin himself wouldn't have come up with a theory of evolution except he had a different background from everybody. He was hired to be the companion of a ship's captain who got depressed if he didn't have a friend with him on this voyage. And so he went on this 5-year voyage around the world and saw all these different animals and all this different geology, and seeing all that led him to develop the theory of evolution. So being at odds with your environment, having a different background, can all contribute to having superior abilities, even if your natural genetic component is shitty. So if we eliminated all the people with shitty genes and everybody was a jock, we might end up with idiocracy. The end.
All right. Well, can't argue with any of that. So what else have you got, Rick?
I wanted to talk about the idea of fairness in American society through the lens of quiz shows. This is the 20th anniversary of me going on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and getting a shitty question. I've convinced you that the question was shitty, that it didn't contain among the 4 answer choices the actual answer because they fucked up their research. And then I sued them and I lost. I didn't really expect to win. I hoped to win. I thought I had maybe a 1/3 chance of winning. You also took a case of really basic fairness before the courts. We don't have to talk about your case in a lawsuit. You
we can
also
talk about it if you want to. I'm not embarrassed about talking about it.
Okay. Well, your dad created the Pink Panther, Inspector Clouseau, a very successful um, movie franchise that was brought back in the I don't know, in what, 2012, with Steve Martin as Inspector Clouseau, and these two new movies in the series um, each grossed more than $1 billion worldwide.
Well, the whole franchise has grossed over $1 billion.
Okay,
But
but anyway, all right, each movie made hundreds of millions. The newer ones, the
right,
older ones
right.
came out
But
in the
they did
'60s
okay. I
when
don't know if they did okay.
they they
Anyway,
they made a
go ahead.
shitload of money. They made what they cost times two or three back, and so they're still a
Something like that.
viable franchise. And
Yeah,
you, as the heir to your dad's creation, you and your siblings took it to court saying you have the legal right. The law says the heirs have the legal right to renegotiate contracts because the contract your dad negotiated now more than 55 years ago doesn't pays you guys a pittance, a fucking crazy tiny amount, less
right,
than and so you went to and MGM wouldn't negotiate with you, so you took them to court, and then against the law, the judge didn't understand the law, and he ruled against you.
right.
Okay, so
The just I mean, this is it's kind of interesting. Um, Apparently, if you write, they passed a law 300 years ago called the renewal right law for all authors. And the reason is that in ye olde England, and then in colonial America, if you were an author and you wrote a book when you were a poor, struggling writer, they would often sell their rights to a publisher. But then 20 years later, the book might still be making money for the publisher. And so, for several centuries, it was considered fair to for the publisher to have renewal rights come up 20 years later, if they still were making money, to give the original author a fair share of the new money coming in. And those rights no longer exist, guys. Partly because of my father's lawsuit, the lawsuit to get the Pink Panther back. It's I mean it exists, but not in the eyes of the judges in our case. Although it has existed for centuries for other authors.
right,
So,
you can run into a bad judge, and that bad judge can create a shitty precedent.
well, I was talking with a lawyer who explained to me most judges, like the judge in your quiz show situation, um, briefly, they asked Rick a question where the city in the world that has the highest elevation. And the problem is they didn't include that city as one of the possible answers. They included four very high cities, but not the highest one. So there wasn't really any way that Rick could have answered that question correctly. It was very strange. Now the point is that this lawyer told me that many judges that are elected because they're law and order judges, and they promise to crack down on crime. But when they receive a case about renewal rights for copyright, which was mine, or the fairness of these questions for game shows, they don't know anything more about it than anybody else because they're not experts in copyright law. They're just people that got elected because they said they were going to fight crime. And that's the dirty little secret about judges is that they really don't know any more than anybody else on most of the cases that they encounter.
Oh, that brings up another thing, that if you go to prison for a sex crime, especially if it's like involving kids, you will never fucking get out. You will serve the length of your term because there's judges who are elected to be law and order judges. Um, it, it, you can't. Nobody's going to vote for a judge who's soft on kitty rapists, right? So even my, there's a guy in my frat that I was in a fraternity in college, and I don't know that I even knew the guy. I just know of him because he was in my frat. And this guy worked as a teacher in a middle school. And it was a different time because he's been in prison for, I don't know, 20 years, long time. And he used to roughhouse the kids, just not all the time, but like, you used to be able to touch kids in a school situation, and it wasn't sinister. Nuns could wrap your knuckles, or you could get. When I was in junior high, you could get paddled. There was a guy who had a paddle, and none of that shit goes on anymore because it's all viewed as creepy and awful. But during his time, the little roughhousing, you pick up a kid and throw the kid back down, was not considered, I don't know, horrible,
Yeah.
except that a couple kids said that in the roughhousing, the guy's hand went down their pants.
Hmm.
And this turned into a whole thing, and he was convicted. And since, like, now I don't know if he's guilty or not. I don't know the guy. But one of the kids recanted and said he was kind of, you know, nudged and prodded into saying that bad things went on, and they
Uh,
really didn't. But the deal is that even in with evidence that shit didn't happen, no elected judge will ever let that guy out because that the next time that judge runs, um, his opponent says this guy likes kitty rapists.
mm.
So that's a situation that goes beyond evidence and goes to the guy wants to keep his job as judge.
Well, I will say, I mean, I was not planning on bringing this up, but this week, Gavin Newsom signed a bill reducing the sentences for child molesters. I guess
Why did he
he's not,
do it?
huh?
What's the rationale?
I think he's an evil pervert, like all Democrats. No, I can't think of any explanation.
Well, he had to
Uh,
offer some explanation.
I didn't go that far into read. As soon as I read that he had done this, I really lost interest in his explanation. But he did, and he's not afraid of getting reelected. He's part of the Democrat machine, and they run California the way they want to. So I challenge anybody in California watching this, please vote for the Republican, even though the Democrats say he's a racist. I can predict that whoever the Republicans put up, the Democrats will say is a racist. Vote for him anyway because what we have now is horrifying.
Well, Newsom's not even running right now.
When he does, if he doesn't get recalled, we're trying to recall him. We have a very vigorous effort to recall Newsom.
The
Uh,
trouble is that California is a very it's one of the bluest states in the country, right?
well, it didn't used to be. They
But right
worked
now it
that
is.
out. They brought in millions of
Yeah, yeah,
immigrants,
but besides that,
most of whom were illegal, and then they gave them the vote. And when that happened in the past 10 years, they took over the state.
all
It's
right, well, some
very,
of that is
very
bullshit. You don't have a much,
insidious.
but I don't want to get in an
No,
argument.
there are estimates that 3 million illegal aliens live in California.
But they
And
don't,
even if they're not voting, their kids will be voting.
yeah, because they're citizens. They're born here and they're citizens.
right, and that's how they turned California Democrat. So
Well,
you've got a
California
child
has, I mean,
molester as
states go
governor.
back and forth, but California used to be Republican. We used to have Reagan as the governor.
Right, but the Democrats figured out that there's a limitless
Yeah,
supply
but that's
of
not what it.
socialists in south of the border, and they brought them into the state and gave their kids the right to vote.
But that's not the point I'm trying to argue here. The point is that in a heavily Democratic state, candidates for statewide office like governor, if they're Republican, unless they're super charismatic, like Schwarzenegger was a Republican governor who won on the strength of his personality, basically. And he wasn't great, he wasn't terrible, and I mean, he's a great guy. The extracurricular fucking aside, which doesn't affect us. Um, he's a great citizen. He's an American success story. Um, but anyway, besides a special situation like that, it's tough for Republicans to get elected, which means that sane, competent Republicans often don't want to put themselves through the meat grinder of the electoral process only to lose like 78% to 22%. Like, it's a waste of time. It's brutal. So often you get candidates when they have no chance of winning that are lunatics or who suck in other ways. Now it's possible to get somebody who's just an upstanding, fucking tilting at windmills, a really good guy or woman who just wants to run even though they know they have no chance of winning, to get their principles out there, um, and take a stand for what they believe in. But often, though, that's one person who's going to run with no chance of winning. But there are the other varieties, the people with, just like a big dose of lunacy or whatever. It makes it tougher to get the having no chance of winning makes it tougher to get quality candidates on average.
Well, I think anybody would have been better than Newsom. Um,
Okay, I mean that's
he's
your.
causing a depression in the state with this insane lockdown. We've gone over it a million times.
Yeah, so I'm not going to
There's,
argue about when you
uh,
say shit like, but
there's no science behind it anymore. Um, just I'd like to you know what I'd like to report there was a very interesting election a fellow a guy that worked for the various political parties and he was talking today. Morris, I think it is, the fellow that used to work for Clinton.
Dick Morris, the,
Dick
the
Morris,
kind
yeah,
of the,
that's
the
it.
dirty trickster guy.
Well, he was
One
a
of the, I mean, every party has their dirty tricksters. He was, I think, the Democrats' dirty trickster.
yeah, and he tends to always say things that I would never have thought of. Um, and he said today, oh, I just wanted to say before I say go any further that the Wuhan virus today in California, a state with 40 million people, took 9 lives. 9 people died of the Wuhan, and we're still locked down. So anyway, what Dick Morris said this morning was that the election hinges on 2 factors, the Wuhan virus and the economy. If you're worried, if your main worry is the Wuhan virus,
How many
polls
times are you
show
going to fucking say Wuhan virus? Is that whose mind are you trying to change?
I refuse to refer to it by a clinical scientific name. The Chinese communists want you to call it anything but the Wuhan virus, and unfortunately, I'm not in league with the Chinese communists like you are, Rick. So Dick Morris said that if polls show that if your main concern is the Wuhan, you'll vote for Biden. If your main concern is the economy, you'll vote for Trump. So it's in the Democrats' interest to do everything they can to say that the Wuhan is still raging through the country like the bubonic plague, and we're piling up bodies 10 stories into the air.
There are enough bodies to fill 9 statues of liberty, maybe 10.
Right, and they're over-reporting those numbers
Well, no, they're
because
underreporting, but
no,
okay.
it turns out that they're reporting. Uh, there's an estimate that 40% of the deaths were caused by Democrat governors putting old people with COVID into rest homes.
They're still fucking
And
dead, those people, regardless of
okay,
which party.
by Democrat governors, the first thing. The second thing is the they're counting people that die in car accidents that have COVID in their blood as COVID deaths. That raises the number. And third, President Trump has demonstrated that we now have a cure.
No, okay, that's the one I want to argue. The other shit is just old bullshit arguments I don't want to rehash. The new one is Trump says there's a cure. The guy who runs Regeneron was on TV today. The guy who created Trump's cure, and he says it's definitely not a cure. The guy who made the drug says no, it's not a fucking cure. And he says it needs large-scale clinical trials. They've only tested it on 106 people so far in a double-blind study. And the guy is the head of Regeneron is very confident that it works, but he still says that it hasn't been subject to large-scale clinical trials. It's also they've only got 50,000 doses ready to go. They're looking for an FDA exemption to give it to people, but 50,000 cases is the number of new cases we're getting in the United States every day. So
Okay.
even if it were a cure, there's not enough of the shit to go around yet.
All right. Well, because
And
we
it's
have
and it,
and
okay.
okay, okay, because we have an effective president that cuts through red tape, he is insisting that the FDA give it an emergency use uh, exemption. And also, we have the right to try law. That is, when you've got a disease that could kill you, you have the right to try an experimental drug. Another thing that Trump instituted years ago when he first took office, because when people were dying, the doctors were prohibited from giving them any drug that hadn't been FDA approved. And Trump said, well, if they're dying anyway, you may as well let them try something. So,
Yeah, nobody
as
objects to
far as
that shit. That's a good
yeah,
idea.
yeah, well, it took Trump to do it.
All right.
One more reason to vote for Trump. But my point is that even if, okay, so my point is we have Regeneron on the way, we have remdesivir and dexamethasone, which constitutes a kind of a cure.
No,
And
they're not.
even if,
The
and I
Regeneron
know,
guy says tonight on 60 Minutes they talked to another guy and they asked him who's like one of the world experts on this shit. They said, "Is this a cure?" And he's like, "No." He's clear on it. He says we're maybe a year or two away from a cure. He thinks, given the way
Rick, I
it's not an
understand.
absolute cure. What this shit
Okay, Rick,
does is it reduces your viral load and you spend fewer days in the hospital on average than you would have if you hadn't gotten the drug. But you still get sick, but you get less sick.
yeah,
It's
I
not a
know.
fucking
And
cure.
Rick, what for those less emotional that are watching this, the reason you die is because your viral load starts multiplying to the point that your body can't fight it off with antibodies. So if it reduces the viral load, guess what? You live.
Fewer people
Now,
die. Yeah, we're
yes,
down
yes,
to
yes,
we're down
yeah,
to
but
about 4,500 Americans dying a week now. We're down where
okay.
So, but
we
we're
we
still
were
losing 4,500. We've got
Rick.
220,000 Americans dead. It'll be about 235,000 by election day. It may get to about 300,000 by New Year's. So people
Okay.
are still dying at
So
a decent clip.
we went from 2,700 people in one day to about 600 per day. All
Well,
right. So that's how
700,
less.
750 on average. Yeah, but we've
Okay.
gotten better at
But
treating
but
it.
wait,
Does it mean that we
but
have like
wait,
an absolute cure? Fucking no.
Rick. One thing you know is math. This is the way I can get a word in edgewise.
Yeah.
There are 8 million people that have the disease, and 220,000 died.
Yeah.
That means that you have got a 98% chance of survival without Regeneron and remdesivir. So don't interrupt me, I know you're excited, with remdesivir and Regeneron, your chances of dying is going to diminish even further. Let's say it's 1.5%. You've got a 99.5% chance of living.
98.5. Come on, do the math.
No,
Our director.
all right.
Well, I don't know what that does. Our director
The
just said that
director,
H1N1, the swine flu, killed 1,800 kids, and you say our director says only 3 kids have died from the COVID, which doesn't
that's true.
sound right.
That's a CDC number. That's the truth is that kids' immune systems just crush the Wuhan virus. So it's not a killer of children. Now, I just wanted to say to
So
finish
it's a
my
killer of old
point.
people. 80% of the
Yeah,
people who die are 65 or older. So, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. But my but my but my,
we're almost in that age range. So I
that's
don't want to die.
then you stay home, Rick, and the other people
I
out
do,
there
except I go out, I
who
get
have a
Popeye's chicken. We got Humphrey yogurt.
yeah,
We got
I know.
yogurt today.
You stay home. The director said, now let me just finish with the new medications, we've got a 99% chance at least of surviving this disease.
98.5.
No, I'm saying the medications will cure most of the people you give it to. Okay? It's not going to cure 1 out of 100. It'll cure most of them. And we already have a 98% chance of survival. So what I'm
50,000
saying is,
Americans get it every day. 700 die every day. That's a rate of death of 1.4%. So just, I
okay,
mean,
and
based on the fucking numbers themselves, that's your death rate.
right, but if those people had access to medication, the death rate would go down dramatically.
I read that the only person in the world who's gotten the combination of drugs that Trump got is Trump. He got the Regeneron, where besides the people in the clinical trial, only 10 or 11 people have gotten it through compassionate use exemption. He got that. He got the remdesivir, and he got the dexamethasone. And he's maybe the only person in the world who got that combo because Trump is the fucking president.
Okay, but he's requesting that we get enough Regeneron that everyone can have it for free. So Rick, you can
You
stay in
know,
your
they made a
house.
deal. They made a deal that Regeneron would provide 300,000 doses for free. So,
Okay.
and that's one
So
week.
look,
That's one week
if
of new
you're
cases. So that's
okay,
enough to.
It's we're all gonna die, Rick. We better vote for Biden because we're all gonna die. Is that what you want
So
me to
the
say?
deal is the head of Regeneron himself says they have to figure out a way to ration the stuff because there's not enough of it to go around. Even
Okay.
with other drug companies,
Rick, they'll make
Regeneron
more.
has given other drug companies permission to manufacture the shit. Even with
Okay.
that going on, there's still not enough. Maybe eventually there
Okay.
will be.
Maybe, Rick. You think there might be. I mean, what is the matter? Okay, Rick. What do you want me to say? Regeneron won't work. We're
No,
all
it,
gonna
it it
die.
works some. It's not, but Trump calls it we have a cure. It's not a fucking cure. It's
Well,
something that
Rick,
reduces the
Rick, if
severity.
you if you have if you have medications now, in March there was no cure. And that's what all the Democrats were excited about. There's no cure. It's you would die. It was just a flip of the coin. Now we have medications that reduce your chances of dying dramatically. The guy that's the head of
Yeah,
Regeneron has to say what he said. He has to say we're not. It's a matter of he could be sued a million times over if he got up there and he said it was a cure, and then somebody got it and died. So he's got to be cautious. He's got to say, we need 5 years of double blind studies with 100,000 patients. No, we've got medications now we didn't have in March, and you should be grateful. The reason you're not is because you've been brainwashed by the Democrats that
I
are
am
using
grateful.
this.
Because, but it's not an absolute cure. It's
It may not be. Rick,
we've gone from 8% mortality when we didn't know jack shit about how to treat it to about 1.5% mortality now.
okay. And what I'm saying is there are things you can get now where there's a cure, but it doesn't always work.
So then
That's
it's not
life.
a fucking cure. If it's
No,
only
no,
a
but
cure if it fucking
look, penicillin doesn't always cure syphilis. It's supposed to cure it, but it doesn't always work, Rick. You
okay.
have to take
Well,
some
what's the
risks
rate?
in
What's
life.
the failure rate?
I don't know. But my point is that
If it's
not
got a high
every,
enough failure rate, if it's got more than a 10% failure rate, then it's not a fucking cure.
okay, Rick, what I'm saying is there is an acceptable risk that you can take in life. And we're at that point right now.
Sure. So okay, so the deal is given the acceptable risk, people with elevated risk, don't go out as much as people with less risk. And people who go out fucking wear masks. You open shit up. We Carol and I went to the fucking thrift store today. We got yogurt today. We passed a big outdoor bar where everybody was watching football. Most people weren't masked. If they want to take that risk, actually, we passed two big outdoor bars where people were watching football and nobody was fucking wearing a mask. Is, would I do that? No, but a bunch of other people are like, all right, we find this risk acceptable. They
All
were
right.
younger than me.
So we can go back to our lives. And my point is you can vote for Trump because viruses go away, but the economy will be here for forever. So
Mhm.
if you believe that Trump can help the economy more than Biden, then you should be voting based on the economy, not on the Wuhan virus.
Okay, so Trump used to outpoll Biden when it came to the economy. Now they're tied. And this past week, Goldman Sachs said that the feeling on Wall Street is that the economy will do better under Biden than under Trump. Trump is the most incompetent president in our nation's history.
Yeah, that oversaw the greatest economy we ever had.
Kind of for what, a year maybe, if you want to look at certain statistics. But now look at it now. He's the only president in 100 years who will leave office with fewer jobs, fewer Americans working than when he took office. Now you can
Okay,
say, well,
well,
it's not his fault, it's bad luck. But you know what? Other presidents had good and bad luck too. And
no, what
he's the
happened
one who
was
stands
that
out for leaving office with a shittier job market.
okay, number one, as I said last 2 weeks ago, we have the same employment numbers that Obama did in his last year in office. Okay? So if you thought employment was good under Obama, then under Trump it's the same. So that's fine. And that's after the Democrat governors destroyed our economy by shutting it down. This is the result of Democrat governors seeing a chance to strangle the economy so that they could cause discontent and make brainwashed people like yourself vote for Biden.
They showed up. I saw on Twitter today a picture of a full stadium in New Zealand. Stadium packed with just regular people enjoy like 30,000 people enjoying a sporting event. Not a mask, maybe some masks, I don't know, but not very many masks because fucking New Zealand was responsible and not stupid about addressing shutting down the virus when they had to. And there are a bunch of cities, a bunch of nations in the world that took care of the virus early. They Trump dawdled. He dicked around for 10 weeks,
No, he
and
didn't. No, he didn't.
yeah,
We the reason we have medications now is because in February he brought all the leaders of the drug companies together, and he formed a plan. He called it Plan Project Warp Speed, where they were to develop medications and vaccines as quickly as possible. And he worked with the FDA and all the major corporations in February. That's that was
but
when we
why was
only
he?
had
But yeah, but
when
he
that was
fucking made
when
it.
that was
He
when
he said
that
he
was
is.
when you're interrupting me. That was when we only had a couple of cases in the whole United States at the same time that he shut down all travel from China against Biden, who said he was being xenophobic and hysterical, and against the other Democrats who said he was being anti-Chinese racist.
His shutdown was fucking like a sieve, and he fucking made it so that people think that conservatives think you're a pussy for wearing a mask. And here we are with 220,000 US dead, which is the highest number of any nation in the world, and
It's
the
not actually,
third
Rick. It's
the
not.
third highest
It's
per capita death rate among
Rick.
the world's developed nations.
Rick. First of all, as far as our death rate goes per million, we're in the middle.
No,
Okay,
we're
we're not
fucking
the
not.
highest.
We'll go to
We're not the
Worldometer.
highest,
No, look at
Rick.
the fucking no. I can. You're fucking lying there. We're
No, you're lying. Actually, the highest in the world is Belgium.
Yeah, Belgium
They,
is number
yeah,
one, and
yeah,
then
I
there's
understand. We're lower. We're about ninth or tenth.
no. We're
We're not
third
we're
among
not
developed nations. We're third.
among developed nations.
I
That's
said
the first
developed
thing.
because
But the
they're
second
fucking
thing
like if
is,
you look at
you're
Peru, if you look at
okay. Yeah.
Venezuela, if you there are some South American countries that are fucked, but these are countries that you'd expect to be fucked because they've got fucked governments. We used to be
Okay.
the fucking cream of the crop in terms of government responses to shit like this, and we haven't been. And so, yeah,
Do
it's
I have to?
Belgium, it's fucking either France or Spain that we're gaining on, and then it's us among the
Oh,
fucking
that's funny. So you admit that France?
not necessarily. Do you consider India a first world country? It's I'm
Well, I consider China a first world country, and
really
the truth is that China,
and for China
Russia,
to have our death rate,
Rick,
more than a
Rick,
million people would have had to die in China. I don't think now
Rick.
they may be lying and minimizing their numbers, but I don't think a million people have fucking died in China.
Well, you're on the side of China, Rick. But let me just
Why?
tell
Because
you,
I'm saying that a million people didn't die in China?
I believe that we will never know how many people died in Russia, India, and China. You're quoting a an unfair, unreasonable lie. You're
No, we
trying to
should we,
convince.
we should
You're
be compared to the fucking world's developed countries. Russia's a shithole with life expectancy of like 61. Fucking, it's a
okay,
terrible country. It's not a first world country.
Rick. I'm
India
gonna
is a
go. I'm gonna
developing
go to.
country with
We know that. We know that, Rick. I'm gonna
we
go
should
to
be compared
Worldometer.
to France,
Go. Let's
Italy,
go. Let's go to.
England,
Let's go to
Sweden,
Worldometer.
Germany, all those
Okay.
countries, the countries that we would normally be compared to, and we were doing shitty compared to them, where they got it under control. Italy got it under control. Now, when Italy has an outbreak, they fucking they're talking about like 30 cases uh, in a day. When we have an outbreak, we're talking about 50,000 cases in a day.
Cases
We're
don't matter,
still
by
doing
the
a
way. It's
shitty
just
job. Things have
deaths.
not
It's
gotten
deaths that
better.
matter.
Treatments have gotten better, but in terms of holding down the number of new cases, we're just as shitty as ever.
Okay,
We're
Rick.
shitty at contact tracing. We're 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 somewhat better at testing, but we're testing 1 million people a day, which is better. We were promised that 4 months ago. And when we test people, we're still not following up. You need testing plus contact tracing. And you need,
Okay, are you done talking?
I guess so,
Because I know this is a very emotional issue for you, and you can't stop talking about it.
because I know
So
the
I want to
numbers and
make.
I know you're full of shit on the numbers
Okay, Rick. Here's what I'll do.
and
I,
excuses.
Rick, would you stop interrupting me? I know you're excited, okay? But I want you to stop talking for a minute, all right?
Uh-huh.
Now, whenever we do this show, you bring up Worldometer, which I read just as much as you do. I can't pull it up though during the show because of the internet problem.
Neither
So I
can I,
want
because
you to,
the computer I use for that is upstairs.
all right, I want us to look up Worldometer and find out deaths per million of the US. And I want you to include Russia, India, and China and assume that they're lying.
But then
So let's look it up right
Russia's not
now.
a
Let's
first
hang up.
world country.
Let's
Russia's
hang up. Rick, let's hang up.
I'm not including those
I'm
countries.
gonna
They're not
I'm gonna
first world
no
countries.
no no. But you said we were the worst in the world.
I said we were third or fourth among developed countries, which doesn't include India, which doesn't include Russia, which doesn't include China.
I think it should include China.
Well,
China
that's your
now
opinion.
has it
But
competes
fucking
with
I'm
us.
saying it shouldn't include I'm saying developed countries. Fucking you like
Well,
Western civilization. When people
I
talk
would
about
like to.
Western civilization, they're talking about European countries. Among developed countries, European countries, Australia, New Zealand, fucking, you're big on like white people not being replaced according to critical race theory. Well, fucking among white people
That's a
countries,
lie.
we are
That's a
fucking
lie.
third in
That's a
shittiness.
lie, Rick. That's a lie. I don't care if white people are replaced. I don't
European
want.
countries, your
I
favorite
don't want to
fucking
give.
countries, we're shitty among them.
I don't. All right. I'm going to look it up right now. Okay. So if you want, you can turn off. We can take a 5 minute break. I'll try and find Worldometer right now. Okay.
All right,
So
five
you don't
minute
have
break.
to just sit there cussing and lying about me. Goodbye.
Bye. You looked up the numbers.
All right. So I'm not interested in the overall cases or deaths. What I'm interested in is deaths per million.
Yeah, I've got all those numbers. I wrote
All
them
right.
down.
That's so do I. Okay. So the USA has 663 deaths per million.
Yes.
Brazil has 707.
Yeah, third world country.
Okay.
All of South America
Sp
is right around where we are. Bolivia
okay.
709, Chile 695,
So you're
Peru
gonna talk
is
over me.
huge at a
You're
thousand.
gonna you're gonna talk over me now. Is that it?
I'm
Can
just
I
going to say
speak
that,
now?
South America, Ecuador 688, they're all right where we are. All these,
Okay. Can I speak now?
go ahead.
All right. So we were at 663. Spain is at 704.
Yep.
Um,
Belgium.
Belgium is at 1,000.
Nope.
Let me see.
878.
878. So Peru is at 1,006.
Yeah. So the only two European countries
No, no,
that
Britain is at 630. That's
that's less.
30. Yeah, that's 33 less than us. We're at 663. Britain is at 630. Chile is at 695. Italy is at 598. We're at 663. They're at 598. Uh, France is at 500. So Russia claims to be at 155. I don't believe it. And according to Worldometer, don't interrupt me, China is not even really on the list. So we don't even know what
No,
China's
you have to
numbers
go
are.
way
We don't
down.
even know.
China claims to be at we're at 663. China claims to be at 3. So
Yeah, and
for
you
China to
believe them.
have a
You
higher
believe them.
death rate, they would have to be underestimating their deaths, lying by a factor of 200 for every.
Yeah, but you believe them because they're on your side. You're
No,
communists.
I
You're a
believe that
Democrat, and they're
I
communists.
believe that they have minimized the number of deaths that they've reported. Do I believe that they have underestimated them by more than 99.5%? No, I don't think so.
Okay, Sweden is at 583.
Yep.
So that's a little less than ours, and they had no lockdown whatsoever, Rick.
Hmm.
So they, by their standards, they did even less than America did by a long shot.
Yeah,
They
they
didn't
went for
have
herd
any
immunity
lockdown.
for half a second. So did England.
Yeah,
But we're
yeah,
doing worse than them, even though we didn't fucking go for herd immunity.
right. We're doing a little bit worse. 633, 663, and they're at 598.
Hmm.
So, Rick, I think you're exaggerating because you want to beat Trump.
I just think we were supposed to, we were the gold standard for responding to shit like this, and now we are not the fucking gold standard. We're the
I don't
bronze
think we
standard.
were.
We're the fucking.
No, I don't think we. There are so many different factors. The fact that more people come to America from China and from Italy, from Europe, played a big part in all this. We're a bigger country. It's harder for us to control our borders. And according to Biden, we shouldn't be controlling them at all. It's they found out that illegal aliens were bringing in Wuhan from Mexico, which has a much higher death rate than we do.
What's
Actually,
Mexico?
Mexico is 648.
Oh, so it's
So
less.
it's less by we're at 663, they're at 648. But we were not controlling the border very well. We don't have a wall. So people with Wuhan can come right in, according to what Biden wants to do, because
All right.
Biden says he's going to stop building the wall. Chile is at 695.
Yeah.
They're more than us. Peru is at
Yeah, I said it's
1,006.
all of South America. Most of South America is higher than us, but do
Yeah.
we historically we've done less shitty at governance and shit like this than fucking South America.
Well, it's harder for us to control our borders. We've got millions of people here that are from other countries. And I personally think we were targeted by China on purpose.
Oh, well, this is
So
just a stew of
that makes
crazy
it even more.
excuse making.
Why
It's
is
like
that crazy? Why is it crazy to you, Rick, that China might have done this
because
on
you will
purpose?
look at everything except for Trump's incompetent response
And
to
no, actually,
justify where we're
Rick,
at.
Trump wasn't incompetent. It was the
Trump's been
governors of the
incompetent at just about everything he's done throughout his
facts, facts.
entire
I
life.
want facts. I want facts, Rick. I want to know what he did.
Trump went
He
bankrupt 6 times in the casino business. He lost 99% of his investors' money
No,
in
no,
a.
I don't care. I don't care. I want to know why you think that the guy that just signed a peace treaty with three Arab countries and Israel, and between two Balkan countries, why is that an example of incompetence? Why is having the greatest economy in the history of the U.S. a year ago, why is that incompetence?
Did we
Why
really
is
have the
it,
greatest
why is
economy?
it,
You
yes,
promised
we
me
did.
all this
We did.
fucking. You promised me 4% growth for quarter after quarter. Did he ever even hit 4% for one? No, I think he maybe hit it for 1 or 2 quarters. He's been
Well,
president for 15 quarters.
if,
He hit it
if
once or twice, and then his last the quarters this year have been like the most disastrous since the
that's
Great
because
Depression.
that's because the Democrats shut the economy down. because
Oh,
the
so the
Democrat
economy was
government.
gonna. I thought Trump saved us from having 2 million dead because of his measures that included fucking. Well, what the fuck did they include? Eventually,
Well,
he
what
told people to wear masks. Eventually and reluctantly.
well, what he did was help to create these medications,
Yeah, the
and
medications, like even like so. Say the medications are as good as you
and
say.
I
Holy
also
mackerel, they come
and
online. He was the first
well,
to get
okay,
to the
you
fucking
asked me
experimental treatment he got.
you asked me what he did. Okay, what
Mhm.
he did was number one, ban travel from China and Europe.
Still 40,000 people came in.
I
Forty
know, and every
thousand
time
people.
you say that, it makes me wonder whether you're just a propagandist, Rick, because I've told you every single time you bring that up, that there are people that had to come back from China
They
that were
had to. Why?
American.
Why? Why
Rick,
did they
can you
have to?
stop
Why couldn't
interrupting
they be
me? Are
quarantined?
you on a drug right now? Can you stop interrupting me?
No, it's just a
There were
crazy farrago of
no,
bullshit from you.
no. Okay, Rick, there were people that lived here that happened to be on trips to China, and they were American citizens or married to American citizens. And when we brought them back, we quarantined them. Okay, so you've been fed lies by your media. He's cut off China and Europe for the first time in 80 years. That it was a very unusual move to cut off travel from the rest of the
And it didn't
world.
fucking
Nobody
work.
had done that before. Well, he did what he could, Rick.
Which
And
wasn't fucking
furthermore,
enough.
we
And we have
have
220,000
and
dead.
and and if the Democrat governors had not been putting sick people into rest homes, then
We
we would
have
have
190,000
probably
dead.
no, we'd probably have their estimates as high as 40% less.
Yeah, those are
And
old
furthermore,
estimates, and they're also bullshit from your media.
and and furthermore, if people had been taking hydroxychloroquine and zinc, we might have had even less.
No, that again
And
is
it was Trump that told us to do that.
you're like the fucking Eagles. Every fucking episode is like a concert of the greatest hits of Trump excuse making bullshit.
Okay, well, all I can tell you is you're the guy that is going to vote for Biden, who got
Yes.
250,000 people killed by ISIS. And I'm the guy that's going to vote for the man that destroyed ISIS. Because
So
you don't give a flying fuck about our foreign policy, what happens to Israel, what happens to all those people that were killed by ISIS. You don't care that China was eating our lunch,
and this continues to.
and that Biden's son accepted 1.5 billion from the Chinese companies, including the Chinese military. You don't
Okay,
care
keep
about
playing
things
your tune.
like that.
People have Trump fatigue. Trump trails Biden by 11 and a half points. 10% of the vote is already in. He's one poll aggregator
What?
gives
What
Trump.
is it? No,
People
I
are
just want.
sick of
I'm
Trump and his
listen.
incompetence and his bullshit and his bluster and his volatility and his crazy lies. And one poll aggregator says
Give
Trump
me a
has a
fact.
14%
Give
chance.
me a fact.
Another
Give me
poll
facts.
aggregator says
Give me
8%.
facts.
Another says one half of 1%. We are saying goodbye to fucking Trump. We have 3 weeks to go. People are sick of Trump. People are sick of this era in America, and with good reason.
I don't care. I don't care. None
So
of that
fine, vote
matters.
for your
None
guy.
of it
Your
matters.
guy is terrible. Your guy will be remembered as terrible. Your guy has given us 3.5 years of increasing misery.
Yeah, you're talking like a little child. You don't have any facts. Now, let me ask you a question. I'm actually going to give you a chance to answer a question, and then you can talk. All right? Here's the situation. Just one thing in particular. I could say building a border wall. I could say
Three
pulling out of
miles
the
of new
Iran
wall. Has he
deal.
built any more than that? In the
He's built over 400 miles of wall, Rick. And
Oh, he's reconstructed 400 miles.
no. What happened was the wall that they had there was just a fence that couldn't keep anybody out. So we started where we had lousy little fences that the Obama administration had left up that weren't keeping anybody out, and he had to put the wall where they were. So it sounds like reconstruction, but what it really is putting down effective border walls for the first time.
Are they effective? So what's the rate of people coming into this country now, even under COVID, compared to before the 400 miles?
It's dramatically less. I don't know the exact number, but it's dramatically less. The Border Patrol is got 100 support for Trump. 100% support. The
Now,
Border
you were going to ask
Patrol.
me a question.
I
Ask me.
was, I was, I was. So let me ask you a question. And I ask this of every Democrat I meet, because for me, it's very, very important. I know it's not important to Democrats, but why is it that one guy, Biden, pulls us out of, he was the point man in Iraq. It was his plan that they used to pull our army out of Iraq and cause, which left it open to ISIS, which killed 250,000 people. And Obama did nothing to stop it. And on the other hand, Trump goes in there, and in 18 months, he completely crushes ISIS. He kills 50,000 of their men and destroys their caliphate. And last month, he accepted the grateful thanks of the Iraqi people and president for destroying ISIS. Why is it that that doesn't make any difference to you at all?
I'll put it in the plus column for Trump, and I'll put it in the minus column for Biden. Is that enough to overwhelm every other reason?
No, but you also support border control, don't you?
Yeah, so has he
Well,
proven to be anything but a demagogue with regard to border control?
No, he's strengthening Kamala Harris has referred to ICE, the agency that is in charge of controlling people that have gotten here illegally and taking them back to their country of origin, ICE. Kamala Harris called them Nazis.
Yeah, they do a
She
lot
just
of
said they're
shit. It's
Nazis.
not
ICE
great.
is Nazis.
Where would you rank undocumented immigrants in your top 10 of America's problems?
I would say it's in the top 3 or 4
All right,
because
so I
we've
don't rank it
accepted,
that high.
we're
I'd
accepting,
put it,
yeah, but we're accepting their estimates as high as 20% of the population of Mexico is living in the southwest U.S.
well, that's just
That we
fucking
have
crazy.
our
That's
border is
ridiculous.
a sieve. No, well, in fact, there's a South American country. I think it's Costa Rica. It's either Costa Rica or Guatemala, or Honduras. There's 3 of them. I believe it's Costa Rica. Half of the population is living in the United States.
How many people live in Costa Rica?
Well, hundreds of thousands.
Okay, so we're a nation of 330 million.
I
So
realize that, but we're taking millions and millions of people from Mexico too. Why is that not a problem?
well,
Why should we
because
be taking, most of them go on welfare and they're taking jobs from Americans. Why doesn't that bother you?
well, for one thing, because out of a country of 328, 29 million people, the most well-regarded statistics on how many undocumented aliens we have as of, I don't know, I haven't seen the most up-to-date statistics, are 10.5 million, which
Okay,
is
that's not the most well regarded. That's just the lowest number. There are
no,
people
that's
that
the
say
Pew
it's as high as
Research
30
number.
million.
That's the
Yeah,
number from the Pew Research Institute,
yeah.
which is the longest standing studier of undocumented aliens.
Right, and there are more recent studies that say it could be as many as 30 million.
Yeah, by less well-regarded, by Ann
Yeah,
Coulter,
but
a
my
study
point
out of
is,
Yale by somebody that Ann Coulter cited in the book of hers you bought. But Pew, who's been studying this for 50 years, I trust their numbers more than one study from a couple
okay,
people at Yale.
I've never heard 10.5 million.
Well, then look
That
it up.
that's even lower. That's even lower than the Democrats say.
I might be wrong. It might be 11.2 million, but I think it peaked around 12 million before the crash of 2008. And then since then, we've lost, according to Pew, we've lost a million because economic conditions were such that people just fucking went home because shit was fucked here.
Okay,
We
your president Biden says he's not going to continue. He will not build one more foot of wall. That's
But he
it. There
said he
won't
would
be a
do
wall on
other
the border.
fucking. Again, it's the greatest hits.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
back to the
I
wall.
know,
4 years
I
later, we're
know.
back to the wall.
But
Biden
you
said
keep telling me,
he would install high tech methods to track the wall.
yeah, Rick, drones don't stop people. The wall is the most effective way of stopping people. That's why the
According to
border
fucking
people,
whom? Yeah, you put the wall up where
according
it's effective.
according according to the Border Patrol, which says that Trump is the best we've got and the best they've seen. The Border Patrol loves the wall. So you're voting if you care about keeping the border closed, then you have to vote for Trump
I don't
because
fucking have to vote for Trump.
Biden
He's been a
Biden is going to
disaster in most ways. But
Israel
yeah,
has a
fucking
wall.
Israel
Yeah.
is in a state of war with.
Well, why
We're
do we
not
have to
fucking
have an
Israel.
open
We're not
border?
Israel. We don't
Rick,
need a 30-foot fucking cement fucking battlement across our entire southern border.
why not?
Because we're not
Why,
Israel. We're not at war with the
no,
Palestinians.
but what I'm saying is, why doesn't it bother you? Why do you want millions of people to come up from the southern border? Why do you want that?
I don't necessarily want millions. We have millions of people. The result of decades of immigration, of undocumented
What?
immigrants. We've had a net negative inflow for the past more than 10 years. We've been losing the number of
No, we're
undocumented
getting millions.
immigrants
We've
in the
had
country has
hundreds of.
declined since 2008, 12 years ago. It's
What
not
if
that
the
big a fucking issue.
what Rick? What if the economy starts doing well? Then will we get a wall? Because Biden says he's going to improve the economy and he won't build any more wall. He's going to have drones flying around. So why is it that you're voting for the guy that won't build the wall? He
I'm
won't
voting for
build
the
one
guy
more
who's
foot.
not retarded and incompetent. And
Rick, you keep saying retarded and incompetent.
no, that's the
Biden,
first time I've said
Biden.
retarded because it's not a
Okay,
nice term, but the
I,
guy.
I think it's incompetent to get 250,000 people killed in Iraq. That to me sounds like
I
incompetence.
think it's incompetent to get 220,000 people killed at home.
Okay, but Rick, right now, stop. You know that Trump did not kill
He
220,000 people in
contributed to the
America.
deaths of
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
220,000 people.
No, he didn't.
And well, you're right. You're right. It's closer if you look at excess mortality. It's closer to 300,000.
No, this is not. Trump didn't kill those people. Trump did not kill those people. Trump didn't even contribute to the deaths of those people.
Well,
He's done
I,
everything he can to save them. And for you to suggest that it's the same thing as the pullout from Iraq is just plain dishonest.
okay, so I'm dishonest. That still leaves all these dead people.
Well,
Some in
don't
Iraq,
lie to
a
yourself,
shitload in
Rick.
Iraq, and a shitload in America.
Don't lie to yourself, Rick. Don't lie to yourself, Rick. My question to you is this. Biden had a choice and he pulled out of Iraq and that country collapsed and 250,000 people died. That is not the same as Trump trying to
I will
fight this
not
virus.
vote here. I won't vote for Biden as president of Iraq. I will vote for him for
Okay.
president of the US.
No, because you don't care about dead people that were killed that didn't have to die. Trump
And
Trump
neither
was
do you.
not
You don't
able
care about 220 fucking thousand
because
Americans who didn't have to die.
because I know that in March Trump was talking about hydroxychloroquine, and I
Hydroxychloroquine doesn't fucking work. If it works at all, it works just kind of okay. Fucking,
okay,
you
but
look to your
Democrats
savior. You look to a guy
no
with no scientific knowledge who pulls a drug out of his ass, and that's your fucking miracle drug.
okay. Trump quarantined China and Europe, which was incredibly radical at the time. Dr. Fauci told him he didn't have to do that. He did it anyway.
Trump won't even
Dr.
let
Fauci,
Fauci talk anymore.
Rick,
Trump has
Rick,
put a lid on Fauci.
You're changing the subject. Dr. Fauci and Biden told Trump not to quarantine China and Europe, and it turned out to be the best move he could have made at the time. Then
The only
he,
good move he made.
well, what about speeding along all these therapies, medications, and
All right, so
the
if that
vaccine?
turns out okay, so that's okay. I'll give you that. But then
Okay, and since hydroxychloroquine at the very least works pretty well, a
no,
lot of the time, just recommending that to people in March would have been very helpful if
it
people
should
were smart enough to use it.
it's equivocal. It helps some people in some situations. It's no better than another half dozen different drugs
Okay, but it was something that might have helped, and Democrats won't take it. And it's not fair of
because
you to
there
say
are
that he
10 other
deliberately
drugs.
killed.
One drug like
It's not fair of you to say that he deliberately killed 250,000 Americans.
no, he didn't deliberately kill them. He killed them out of vanity, out of ignorance, out of apathy,
Show,
out of
show me how he did that. Show me how he did that. By telling people not to wear
because
masks?
he wouldn't wear a fucking mask. Anyway, we got to wrap up. I
Rick,
said I'd
Rick,
be done by
Rick, it was
midnight. It's
Trump.
midnight. He wouldn't wear a mask.
He wouldn't wear a mask. He
Because it
wouldn't wear a
smears his
mask.
makeup. He's got 40% of the country convinced that mask wearing is for pussies. People who are experts in this shit say that masks in the current situation are more effective
Okay.
than a vaccine would be.
Okay. And so because Trump didn't wear a mask, he killed 220,000
That's just
Americans.
one of about 8 different reasons that he
He
bears
didn't do anything.
responsibility
He
for.
didn't do anything bad. He's done
All
everything
right.
he
Well, anyway,
can,
we're
Rick.
saying goodbye to him in 22 days, and I got to say goodbye to you because I got to wrap it up at midnight.
Well, I feel bad. I'll miss you until our next conversation, Rick.
Okay.
Goodbye.
All right. Bye. Thank you, everybody. Lance versus Rick at gmail.com. PayPal address. Thank you for watching. Oh, yeah. It's like now we're going ad free. So fucking share it with people who you would like to annoy with people yelling at each other. Or, maybe you know people who like yelling.